You don't really know what you're gonna get when you dip and take a bite. You don't know until you take a bite. That's the savory surprise. What's a fun dippable snack that's also a party game? Betty Crocker's answer? Appetizer Fondue Dippers. I'm Melinda and I'm cooking my way through Betty Crocker's 1971 recipe card library. This month is Fondue Month on the channel. I'm so excited. I have a whole section in the recipe card library for fondue recipes, but I haven't made any of them because I didn't have a fondue pot. And now I do have a fondue pot, so we're gonna make some fondue. I'm excited to try out this recipe card for Appetizer Fondue Dippers. It is from this fondue section, card number 20, and there's 2 recipes on the back of the card. I'm excited to try them both out. The first one is called Savory Surprises, which I think is gonna be really fun. You basically make some pastry dough and you wrap a variety of things in this pastry dough and bake it, and then that's what you dip in the cheese fondue. So you don't really know what you're gonna get when you dip and take a bite. Is it gonna be filled with an anchovy fillet or a stuffed olive or some salami and cream cheese? You don't know until you take a bite. That's the savory surprise. And then the second recipe is Swiss Cheese Appetizers, which is again similar with pastry dough, but this time the filling is mushrooms and Swiss cheese. So I think that's gonna work out really nicely too. I'm excited. Betty says to pair these appetizers with the fondue on card number 4, which is the Mexican Midnight Fondue, and is essentially kind of a beer cheese fondue. Seems pretty classic fondue vibes to me. It has both cheddar cheese and Swiss cheese in it, so I think it'll pair well with both the Savory Surprises and the Swiss Cheese Appetizers. So I'm so excited. Let's get started. All right, we're gonna start by making our Savory Surprises and Swiss Cheese Appetizers, both of which use Betty Crocker's pie crust mix. So the recipe is to use both crusts of the pie crust mix for each one, but I'm gonna half each recipe so that we have 2 types of dough so that we can make both types of dippers. So, does that make any sense? I don't know if it's gonna make sense for me. Basically, I'm gonna follow the instructions for making one crust pie, which should be half the box. So that's 1 1/3 cups of pie crust mix. So we'll start there. So I've got 1 cup here, which I hope 1 1/3 is half the bag. Makes me a little nervous. Okay, that's 1 cup. That's 1/3 of a cup. So that's about half the bag. And then the recipe calls for the Savory Surprises to mix in a cup of shredded cheese before adding the water. And I'm gonna mix in a 1/2 cup, so making half a batch. I'm just gonna kind of gut check what half of this cup would be. That's about half. So I'm just gonna kind of mix that together with my hands, get that incorporated. Then we need to add 2 tablespoons plus 2 teaspoons of cold water. Ta-da! So I'm just gonna use a spoon to kind of mix that together. My experience every time I use this pie crust mix is that I think it's not wet enough and I add more water and then it's too wet. So I'm gonna try to be really careful here to just get it incorporated with what I put in. And I'm trying to like squeeze that cheese a little bit so that it really kind of melts into the dough and it isn't like its own little sticks anymore. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this aside for a second and we're gonna make the other dough, which is the Swiss cheese appetizer dough, which is the same kind of premise. We're gonna use the other half of the pie dough, but we're gonna roll that one out. Okay, so let's go again. We'll see if we have 1 1/3 cup left, and that'll be how I know I did this correctly. So about 1 cup. Let's see if this is 1/3. Hey, we kind of did it. Now we're gonna do the same thing. 2 and 2. 1 of each. Now we're gonna mix again. Our second dough has come together. So let's go ahead and get set up to roll it out. All right, so we're gonna take our Swiss cheese appetizer dough and roll it out to about 1/8 of an inch thick. So I'm gonna flour this board here that we're working on. This is the other key I've learned working with this pastry dough mix, is that you have to use a lot of flour or it'll get sticky. So let's go ahead and roll this out. So now let's assemble a few of these and see how we feel about things. I've got a 2.5-inch pastry round cutter here, and I'm just gonna cut as many circles out as we can. We're gonna need 2 circles per dipper. That's all we could get from this first pass. But let me remove the extra dough. Okay, we'll start with making 2 of them, I guess. Okay, so what we're doing is on 1 pastry round, she says to place 1 square of sliced Swiss cheese, then a mushroom. I have some sauteed mushrooms. I just sauteed them in some butter. So I'm gonna put a mushroom on. Is that enough? Should I put a second mushroom on? Then I'm gonna do another slice of Swiss cheese. I'm gonna dip my finger in some water and kind of wet the edges. I'm gonna put the second pastry round on top, and we'll seal the edges with a fork. The idea is that these are little mushroom cheese pockets. Ta-da! But we'll see what happens in the oven. So I'll keep making these and then we'll go from there. All right, we got the Swiss cheese appetizers done. I only ended up making 6, which is not a lot, but I'm excited to give that a try. It was on the recipe card, so I was like, I might as well make it, but I'm really here for the savory surprises, and that's what we're gonna work on next. So what I have selected is from Betty's filling suggestions. She says you could fill the savory surprises with a rolled anchovy fillet, 1/3 of a cocktail wiener, salami or smoked sausage cube, cream cheese ball wrapped in dried beef, stuffed olive, salted peanut. And so I took some inspiration there. I did find these rolled anchovies that have a little caper in them. I thought that'd be a good surprise. And then I saw salami and I saw cream cheese ball, and I thought to myself, on the channel we once made these salami wedges with cream cheese and they were really good. So instead of using those as 2 separate filling options, I'm gonna roll the salami and cream cheese instead of the dried beef, which y'all know I don't like. If you saw my chip beef and popovers recipe episode. So we're gonna do a salami cream cheese filling, and then we're also gonna do a stuffed olive filling. And I found these nice garlic stuffed olives, which I thought would be fun. So let's try to fill some balls, I guess. She says, with hands, pat about a teaspoonful of dough at a time into a thin round, and then wrap around a filling. So let me start with, I guess, these capers. Yummy. I actually really like anchovies. So what do I do here? I guess I'm gonna take a teaspoon of dough, whatever that means to you. It's about a teaspoon. And I'm gonna flatten it out with my hands, and then I'm gonna put one of these anchovy caper guys in there. Is that too big to get, covered? We'll find out. Gotta kind of pinch the dough around him. Oil is escaping. And this is the fun surprise, is you won't be able to tell what's in the ball when you eat it. Okay, cute. I guess I'll keep going with the anchovy ones while I have it open. Do a few of those. The way the oil kind of squirts out is not cute. These olives are kind of too large to go in one, I think. So I'm gonna, cut it. I think I'm gonna cut it in half. See what that does. I think it's about the same size. You can't really tell which one's got an anchovy in it and which one's got an olive in it, right? Let's put the other half of the olive in. Another one, okay. Now let's try the salami cream cheese idea. So I think I'm gonna take a slice of salami, and then I'm gonna take a little dollop of cream cheese, put it in the salami, and kind of roll that up into its own ball. And then I'm gonna take a pinch of dough, flatten it in my hand. So I'm gonna put that salami in, and we're just gonna wrap. I hope I have enough dough to cover the salami. And it's a little bit bigger. Maybe I just need a little less cream cheese so that I can make sure that it feels the same size as the others. But that's the plan. So I'm gonna keep filling them, and then we'll pop them in the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes and let them bake. For the beginning of fondue month, let's start at the beginning. Where does the word fondue even come from? Well, fondue is from the French verb fondre, which means to melt. And while currently the name means anything served warm in a pot, It did originate as kind of a combination of melted cheeses and wine, cognac, or brandy. In fact, if we go way back in time, the first mention of fondue was actually in Homer's Iliad from around 800 to 725 BC, where it was described as a mixture of goat's cheese, wine, and flour. But the dish became popular in the 1800s in the French and Swiss regions of the Alps. Thrifty Swiss mountain dwellers invented fondue to use up hard cheese and stale bread. It was a simple dish, not at all the glamorous fad we came to know it as. So how did it get so popular? The cheese cartel. That's right. Starting after World War I, Switzerland's cheese industry was controlled by a group called the Swiss Cheese Union, who sought to maintain the business's prosperity by fixing the price of milk, limiting production, and restricting the kind of cheeses one could produce in Switzerland. They saw it as a way to protect the country's prosperity while Europe recovered from the war. So in order to sell as much cheese as possible, they took inspiration from the simple fondue dish and used all kinds of marketing techniques to make it a glamorous communal party dish that Americans had to try. We'll talk more in the next episode about how the fad grew out of control. All right, it's time to make the fondue. We are following the Mexican midnight fondue recipe, which says to toss the flour, salt, pepper, and cheese until cheese is coated. So in the pot where I'm gonna cook it, I'm gonna go ahead and put in our 2 types of cheese. I have 8 ounces of Swiss cheese. The package just said Swiss. I don't know what kind. Is it Gruyere? I don't know. And a package of sharp cheddar cheese. Then I have a little bit of flour. I'm just gonna toss that together by hand here. Looks good. So now, what do? Oh, you know what I should have done wrong? Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this back in this bowl. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take 12 ounces of beer and we're gonna heat that in the pot. All right, so the beer is in the pot, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a cup of the cheese mixture at a time, let it melt, and then add another cup. So there goes some cheese. The beer is so foamy. How can I tell if the cheese is melted when all I see is foam? This looks weird and bizarre. It's cheese and beer. I just have to be patient. It's gonna melt. It's gonna be fine. Patience is a virtue. Okay, the cheese is seemingly melted into the beer. It looks very strange. I need to add more cheese in so that it doesn't look so watery and weird. So I'm gonna go in with another batch of cheese. It still is very liquidy. Maybe the beer needs to kind of boil off a bit. I think it also needed the flour to kind of get soaked up and thicken the sauce. It was all gonna happen. I was just impatient. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is just take a little bit of Frank's Red Hot and toss that in. Just a couple drops. Add some extra flavor. I think I'm just gonna let that sit for a bit and bubble, and then we'll transfer it to the fondue pot after it gets a little thicker. Okay, so the final step is to take a piece of garlic clove, and we're just gonna scrape the inside of the bowl to get the inside of the bowl just with like a hint of garlic. This is supposed to be an earthenware fondue pot, and I have an enamel one, so I don't think it's really gonna grab onto the enamel in the same way that it would earthenware. But I figured I might as well give it a shot. There it goes. It smells like beer. Hey, it smells like beer. Okay, let's get this on its little heat source and then we'll give everything a taste. All right, I'm ready for a savory surprise. I've selected my first victim. I hope it stays on the fork while I go for a dip, because it's very crumbly. Now I'm supposed to dip it in a figure 8 motion, but again, I'm worried about losing it. So, whoa. Okay, I'm putting it in my mouth. Oh, it's an anchovy one. It's so salty. Oh God. I feel like I'm on Fear Factor or something. It's so salty. I just want to taste the cheese too. I feel like I was so distracted by the salty anchovy. Let me just taste the cheese. That's beer and cheese. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. It's like not as cheesy as you want it to be. Because what I want is like queso. But what I got is fondue. I'm gonna try these Swiss cheese things, which as you can see have kind of fallen apart a bit. And I think I'm just gonna dip it in because there's no way I could stab this with a fork and keep it on the fork, right? It's just kind of like a crumbly bread situation. I think there's a mushroom in there. The fondue is weird. There's a lot of Swiss cheese flavor in this, which is good because I'm not getting as much cheese flavor as I want out of a cheese. So this is kind of nice. Fascinating. All right, for my first foray into fondue, I am a little disappointed. Maybe specifically this like beer cheese fondue just isn't my vibe. And I don't know, I kind of am craving something normal to dip in it instead of the Savory Surprises. And I don't have anything. I don't have anything to dip it in except the Savory Surprises. So yeah, it's okay. I wish it was more cheesy. And then the Savory Surprises, I mean, I only tried one surprise so far, but I'm trying to save some for my guests that are coming over. But the one I tried, the anchovy one, was very anchovy forward. It's a kind of a neat party trick. It's something to talk about around the table, which Savory Surprise you get. But yeah, that was a lot of flavor. So yeah, I'm gonna be intrigued to see how the other ones taste, the olive and the salami. They might be good. And the Swiss Cheese Appetizers were just okay. I mean, it's a lot of Swiss cheese, which I'm not a huge fan of the flavor of Swiss cheese, and mushroom, and this like flaky crust pastry that's not very good to dip in fondue, which I had a feeling. So I don't know, weird choices I've made for my first time dipping into the fondue world. But maybe that's kind of the point of the fad. It was never that good to begin with, but people just went crazy. And then one day they woke up and they're like, hey, fondue isn't actually that good. And they stopped making it. Is that how fads work? I don't know. Anyway, these are just okay. I don't know. Back in the box. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, Betty has a lot of ideas for how to dress up meat like salami for a party. So watch cold meat morsels next. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, and until next time, happy homemaking.